What's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new episode of the podcast. If you are new here, welcome to the show. My name is Jared Hamilton, and man, am I grateful that you are listening to me right now, or watching if you're checking it out on the YouTube. Shameless plug. So I hope you're well. I do apologize that some of the timeliness of the episodes have not been the greatest lately. Things have been just I basically word a good nuts, right? Things have been all over the place. Business has been fantastic. We've been doing a ton with helping clients. I've been hiring more people. Like literally things are going at such an amazing rate. Like things are growing. People are getting helped. Like everything is literally amazing. Like I could not ask for it to be better. But the downside is like schedules have been off and I have been doing a shit job at getting episodes out consistently to you. So I apologize, but nonetheless, we're here now and we're going to get into some really cool stuff in today's episode. So, I do want to mention, excuse me, the next episode that will be out, we will be talking about the podcast rebrand. So I'm actually going to be rebranding the podcast. I apologize if you can hear my phone going off, but we are in the middle of a podcast rebrand. So I'm just kind of throwing this out there so you come back. I'm opening the loop, the metaphorical loop, so to speak. That way you can come back and check out the next episode to see what the big rebrand is about. So, and I'm so excited about that and going into the next chapter of the podcast. I'm so pumped. So nonetheless, but I'm glad that you're here now. Whether you're new or you're returning, it means a ton for real. The internet's a huge place, and the fact that you're choosing to spend time with me is pretty fucking dope. So I appreciate it. Now, before we get into the nuts and bolts of today's episode and the interview that I did, I do want to have a big thank you to the sponsors of the show. Sponsor number one is Flex Pro Meals. I talk about them all the time, guys, because they are some bad motherfuckers and they help my life a ton. They keep everything so convenient, so smooth as far as food. Because here's the thing, I've noticed the more like when looking at what I decide to buy and what I spend my money on and things like that, I'm noticing it all revolves around convenience. Literally, like everything, like when it comes to what's most convenient and keeps my day-to-day flowing smoothly. Like I literally just bought a gym membership, not at the gym that I really wanted to go to. That's a half hour away. I bought a gym membership at the gym that's 30 seconds from my house just because it's more convenient, right? So that's the beautiful thing with Flex Pro is they make, uncertainty and chaos a little bit more doable because I don't have to worry about, like in my case, there's times we forget to, we don't cook the food we got, or like Shelby just went to the store and we just haven't made the food yet, or things are busy and I don't have time to make the food or get it ready. I just have time to throw something in the microwave, or where I normally would hit drive-throughs because things are in a crunch, I just grab a Flex Pro on the way out of the house. Whatever it is, I'm telling you, it's a game changer keeping things in line because it saves you money just because the way the meals are set up. They're on point with your goals as far as calories or macros, protein, things like that. And they're made by a chef. It's like you can't ask for a better combination. So massive thank you to them. And if that's up your alley, if that's kind of what you're interested in, you should definitely check them out. And I have a promo code that'll save you money. So since you're here on the podcast, if you go to flexpromeals.com and you can use my code Hamilton Trained and it'll knock off 20% at checkout. It's pretty dope. And all that information is also in the description. Whether you're listening to the podcast on the show notes or you're on YouTube watching it there, it's in the description there as well. Then we have sponsor number two. We have First Form. If you are in the world of supplements, like I know you guys know I'm not a huge supplement pusher, but supplements absolutely have their time and their place. And it's one of those things where you usually always get what you pay for, right? And the thing with First Form is not just from a company standpoint, their culture, their core values, what they do, what they stand for, that kind of thing. Are they like 10 out of 10? But the actual products themselves, they're third-party tested. They are made the right way. The labels are accurate, the whole 9 yards. Like that's the thing is if you study the supplement industry at all, there's a lot of gross. There's a lot of danger. There's a lot of inaccuracy. There's not too much regulation, but First Form, even on that standpoint, is a 10 out of 10. It's what I suggest to most people. And it's you can't get better than them, basically, is what I'm saying. So if you're into supplements and you're looking to level up what you're taking, or you're trying to getting ready to dabble in the world of supplements, I'll leave a video down below about, what supplements are best for fat loss and things like that. But if you're also interested, I do have a free shipping link down below as well. That way, if you do end up wanting to get anything, free shipping, you're taken care of. So nonetheless, let's get into the nuts and bolts of today's episode because I interviewed my friend Jonah. So Jonah it's funny. Jonah and I actually have not known each other for that long. We connected at like a business event and and we just hit it off, right? And then Jonah and I also share a lot of the same philosophies when it comes to fat loss, because him and his wife Hannah own their coaching business, and we both help people in similar capacities. And it's always good to get, different perspectives from different coaches and from different people. So I think you guys are going to get a lot out of today's episode with Jonah. So it's interesting because there's, when it comes to like planning these podcasts, like I might have an idea of some like notes to talk about, but I love it when I can just riff with somebody and magic comes out. And that is very much what happened with Jonah. So the kind of underlying theme of today's episode is about the power of intention. Right. But especially not just as it pertains to fat loss, but as it pertains to your whole life and everything like that. So that's really what we got into today. I know that sounds kind of like airy fairy and philosophical, but it's also extremely tactical, because if you do not have intention with what you're doing, whether it be in whatever area in your life, but specifically with weight loss and anything from your workouts to your nutrition to your headspace to all this kind of stuff, then you're ultimately more than likely going to lose, because this game is more than just checking boxes. You have to have massive levels of intention with what you're doing. And I give some analogies in the interview. So I know you're going to get a lot out of it. I don't want to give away all the secrets. So I know you'll love it. Be sure and check out the whole episode, and I will talk to you soon. Let's fucking go. What's up, man?
Dude, I'm happy. I'm so excited that you remembered while we were in Arizona, because I was like, I completely forgot for a while. I was like, oh yeah, we're doing the podcast.
That's right, baby. That's right.
I think Chase said it once. It was like, is this how you know I made it? It's like I got to be on Jared Hamilton's podcast.
Well, hopefully that's I wouldn't say that's the definitive I made it, but like maybe goals right there. So
definitely goals, man. I'm just happy. I feel incredibly lucky to get to call you my friend and be able to do this. I know. I
love it.
You know what's even more exciting? We don't really have anything planned. We're just going to bullshit here.
Yes, literally. And I was actually going to bring that up. My favorite podcasts and are the ones where me and whoever just riff, right? Like I thought about texting you and asking about some ideas, but I'm like, you know what? Jonah and I are close enough where like we can just roll. And those end up being the best episodes because it's like Kyle Cease vibes. It's just like what was supposed to come out comes out. You know what I mean? So, but dude, I mean, really, totally side note, I'm really appreciating the man bun.
Oh, thank you.
I'm normally not a man bun person, but you pull it off very well, and I don't say that lightly.
Well, thank you, because I'm still like in this weird like it's new. I'm looking at it. Is it there? Once it gets a little bit longer and these little baby hairs start to go away, I might be a little bit more bought into it. But thank you, I appreciate it.
Did you see my comment on Hannah's post the other day?
Yes, I did. Right. Yes. Yeah. I'm like, goddamn right she is. And she's the only reason why I'm even doing it like right now. Because I was like talking about like it's stuck in my hair this morning. She's like, can I make you a man bun today? I was like, yeah.
I love it. For those listening, for context, what happened was Jonah's wife and business partner made like a post on Instagram where she was like looking to the side, like really stoic and just like bad bitch vibes. And I just being a piece of shit like myself, I just commented, I'm like, are you admiring Jonah's man bun?
So, and the answer was guilty.
Yeah, guilty as charged. So cool, man. So what's up?
Oh, what's up is, being back the past couple of weeks, like we've been traveling, right? Like we saw each other at Coaching Con, and we went and to hang out with my family in Florida for Easter. So today has been like my first like chill day. Right. Yeah. And it was actually really exciting because me and Hannah just got done having a meeting. And
I thought the way you were wording, I thought you were like, you guys got done making love. And I'm that's fucking dope. Let's go.
wrong context for this podcast.
Or is it though?
Maybe not. But it was really cool because the conversation kind of started going in the direction of like intentions, like what everything we do. Like I always have this bad habit for myself, and I think this kind of can resonate with a lot of people. And like if they're on a weight loss journey or really anything in life, like they're doing things just because they have to, right? They just kind of feel like there has to be a check off the box. But if you can be really intentful with your time, which is something which I really work on, is like I always struggled making content, for example, right? Or I used to struggle a lot. I've gotten a lot better. because it just took me reps, like showing up eventually.
Yeah,
Show up
for sure.
eventually, and it just becomes like a part of like what I do, right? And then after a while, now like once you establish that consistency, it's like great. Like now, how do I actually tweak and modify to actually get what I want out of this,
Yeah.
right? So that's where the conversation kind of went. It's like my intentions were to just show up consistently. Now I've done that. Now I can use that consistency to actually put the intent of like, this is what I want to get out of showing up. Right. And that's something I resonate a lot with. And that's kind of why I'm super excited to kind of talk to you today.
Yeah, dude.
This is because like I get really engrossed in like conversations. Like I love talking to people and helping people. Like that's when I'm making content to help somebody, I show up like nobody's
intention's different.
Yeah. And then it's like for anything else, like I feel like I'm forcing, right? But that's also because I'm forgetting the intent behind it, right? And like using that for like health and fitness. Like, okay, I show up to the gym consistently, like I'm not seeing the results I want. Like, what's the intent behind it? Like, are you doing it to burn calories? Are you doing it to punish yourself? Like, what's the intent that you're going into something, And I think like unknowingly we have all these we think we have these positive intentions, but we don't really actually analyze them for what they truly are. And that kind of keeps us stuck and spinning our wheels over and over again. And I guess I'm curious what you think about that kind of stuff. So I've been reading your content a lot lately. And I'll be honest, I take a lot of it as inspiration.
I appreciate that, bro. I appreciate that. No, intention is huge. It goes back to like doing something with intention versus doing something as a box checking. The best analogy I've ever heard with intention, unfortunately, I cannot take credit for. I usually pride myself in my analogy abilities, but this one I'm stealing from Andy Frisella. Andy Frisella has the best analogy when it comes to intention. Because the thing is, with intention doesn't necessarily mean more effort either. I think a lot of people think when they think about whether it be an intentional workout, intentional content, intentional and being intentional on your date night with your wife, like whatever it is, intention changes everything, right? Well, he says intention is he says it's like washing a car. He goes, imagine you're washing, your car is filthy. It's covered in mud or dust or dirt. It's just gross, right? Like my car looks like right now. And so you go and do the thing, you like hose it all down. You get it all wet, you get your rag or your sponge and you're just like scrubbing. You're taking like the next hour to fucking scrub the shit out of your car. And you're using lots of elbow grease. You're putting so much effort and you're going hard. And then once you're done scrubbing, then we do what? We rinse it off. So you get the hose, you rinse it off, but you forgot the intentional piece of soap. You forgot literally, but think about how much effort soap takes. Right? That's it.
Yeah.
He said, and the way he words it, he's like, in that analogy, intention is the soap. You all the efforts everywhere else, right? You got the car wet, you scrubbed really hard, and then you rinsed it off, but your car still looks like shit because you didn't have the intention of the small detail of. That's it. Literally a millisecond of soap is all the intention took. But you and I both know if we have a really dirty car and you don't use soap, it's going to be filthy.
Yeah.
But the intention difference isn't just doing all the hard work, because that's what everyone does. People coach their clients and a lot of people are just checking off the boxes, or people are going to the gym, they're just going through the motions. But intention is being I think it's a level of being very present, being very attentive to details, and not just checking the box. You're putting all of your focus and being and your ability to be present. I think that would be the two things to sum up, in my opinion. Intention is the ability to focus and being present within that focus.
Yeah, I love that, dude, because that took me to like, this is why
there's no notes, by the way, because this shit happens.
Good, because this is how I fucking talk, dude. We'll just go on a rant. This is how I do my coaching calls, right? Like there's an intent, right? Like people sign on and they have an idea of where they're headed, but like we can't script everything out to a T. Like we need to be able to be ready to hop in and adapt to what the current situation is, even though we still have the same destination of wanting to lose weight, improve body composition, whatever, right? But it's not perfect, right? Like, and the fact that after you finish that, like, it reminded me of how I used to never believe in how you do one thing is how you do everything, right? And intent is so powerful in that, right? Because like I was a college athlete, right? Grew up playing football my entire life. And like, I had to do my exercises. I was forced to work out. Right. And it was like, well, you have 5 sets of 20 today at 90% your max. And I'm like, excuse me? Like, how? Right.
Yeah.
And the point wasn't for me to like, I'm going into this to perform at the highest level. It's like, I'm going to perform well enough to get this shit done and not worry about it.
Yeah.
Right. But that like mentality bled into everything that I was doing with unknowingly, and then like when you hear how you do one thing, how you do everything, like you remember the things that you're good at. It's like, fuck that. Like that's not true. But then you kind of like step back and look at your intentions behind all those things. And they do bleed over into everything. Mm-hmm. And once you can actually identify them and remember to add the extra squeeze of soap behind your intention, right?
Yeah.
And you move it into a way that actually aligns with your values, what you're actually after. Then that soap squeeze takes the checking out the box and amplifies it to a whole new level.
Yeah. No, well, that reminds me of I think his book is up here somewhere. My wife is making my bookcase look all pretty. So like, I don't know where anything is at. So actually there's a book up here on this. Oh, wait, no one can see if you're watching the YouTube video. The book is right up there by the globe. Anyway, there's actually, so this goes back to how big of a deal intention is, and the concept of how you do one thing is how you do everything. Because I always had the back and forth relationship with that. Because like I every person I look up to believes it. So I believe it. I just believe I suck at it. You know what I mean? Because we all don't ever have every duck in a row. But I also believe like if you'll be shitty in business, you'll be shitty more than likely in your marriage. Or if you treat one friend like shit, you're probably willing to treat another friend like shit. Or if you're willing to, have shitty integrity in one area, you're going to have shitty integrity everywhere. Right. And so of course, believe that scales. Standard scale is what I believe. Standards and character scales. But along the lines of intention, so it's funny is I actually used to look up to this gentleman. I still look up to him. His name's Dr. Jason Winkle. I have not spoken to Dr. Winkle in so long, but he used to be someone in my early stages of when I started training martial arts like a decade ago. He was like one of the big guys that we like would study from. And then ironically, when I got my second trainer job, he took over the CEO position of a gym of this humongous YMCA. Like it's this ginormous, it's like a multi-million-dollar, 14,000 member YMCA. It's astronomically huge. Wow. Or at least I think it is. I think a multi-million-dollar, 14,000 member YMCA is crazy. But he took over the CEO position and ended up being my supervisor. So I'd see him every day when I would go to work. But at the time he was like when I say this dude's got like a PhD in leadership, like, actually, I'm pretty sure that's what his PhD is in like leadership tactics or something crazy like that. He's also he was one of the heads at West Point, where he was responsible. Like, this is the guy like sports teams would bring in to analyze their leadership, or West Point would bring him in and not only teach them combatives. He developed a system called Marshall Concepts, where it was a combative systems like used by like West Point, but he would also very Jocko Willink vibes. Jocko is a leadership guy. He's a military tactics guy. He's a fighting systems guy, but he could look and take his Jocko skills to like a NFL team and go, that's your cancer, get him out. Or like teaching leadership. So anything leadership related, especially military related, this dude was just like a fucking gangster, dude. He's crazy. Well, he wrote a book called The High Performance Athlete. One of my favorite books originally that I read. I haven't read it in years now, but this all goes back to tie this kind of story together. I went to, back in the day, I used to go to all these hammer strength clinics, right? They used to have them all around where like they bring in all these strength and conditioning coaches and do like a seminar, right? Everyone does their presentation. Well, all of a sudden I show up at this one in Terre Haute, Indiana, and here comes Dr. Winkle. And I'm like, oh, what are you like? This is dope. Like, this is a guy I could listen to for hours. Like I said, we haven't talked in forever. But he, there was one thing he said in his talk. I don't even remember what his talk was about, but I remembered one story. You want to talk about the power of stories. I don't remember what his talk was even about, but there was one story that comes all down to the power of intention and attention to detail. That changed the way that I viewed this stuff forever. It was this, because again, big military guy, military teams bring him in, like he would like like special forces need some help with combatives, they'd bring in Winkle. They have 400 army recruits need to learn something, they'd bring in Winkle. Like that he's just that guy. One of the most charismatic, best humans I've probably ever met, by the way. Astronomical leader. Well, he said, he asked,
sold me on this guy.
Dude, he's amazing. And he has a beard, which makes it even better. No, he's a savage. But you never know it. He's the sweetest guy ever. But anyway, it'd be funny if this ended up getting around to him, because like I said, I haven't spoken with him in years. But he told a story at this clinic. Like I said, I don't even remember what this clinic, like what his presentation was about, but he was talking about he told a story. He asked everyone, he goes, what do you guys think the number one reason for death on the battlefield is for soldiers? He goes, what do you guys think the number one reason for death on the battlefield is? So everyone's like, these crazy answers. Everyone's like, well, outnumbered, or strategy, or improper strategy going into the whatever, all this stuff. He goes, malfunction of the weapon. Some guy kicks in a door, goes to shoot a terrorist, and his gun goes click, and it doesn't shoot the terrorist. It goes click. That is the cause of the number one death on the battlefield, according to Dr. Winkle. But why is that important? Like, why? It's like, okay, well, why does that matter? He goes, do you know why the gun went click? He goes, because it wasn't cleaned well enough. We go, okay, when do you clean your firearm? He goes, when you're safe in your bunker, when you are not in war. He goes, so you tie the number one reason for death on the battlefield is a lack of intention when you are not fighting, when you are safe cleaning your gun. He goes, that is the number one reason for death on the battlefield, is because you were not intentional enough in paying a close enough attention to the details in cleaning your weapon. Because that's scaled all the way out to the battlefield when it's time to go bang and your gun goes click and the soldier dies. So, and I'm just like, holy fuck, that's such an intense story. But It goes back to that. Like, you want to talk about the power of intention and attention to detail. That was one of the biggest things I picked up from my time with Dr. Winkle. And I'll never forget that story when it comes back to not just checking the boxes. Cause like, especially like I'm from Indiana, I'm a big gun guy, got several guns and stuff like that, go shooting for funsies. But it goes back. It's so easy to not clean your weapon with intention. You got to take it all apart. You got to use all the stuff. And it's easy to go, it's fine. I'm not killing anybody. It's not a big deal. But like when you talk about the scale of intention, it's crazy.
Yeah, no, it really shows how one decision, it amplifies. Right, one decision you made like a day or two ago can have a massive impact. It's especially if it could be a life and death situation, right? That's not the case for everybody, but that's that's the point of analogies, the points of stories. You don't even remember what the whole point of it was, but you remember that connection to it so much, right? And that is. I'm so glad. I'm glad we're talking about this, because this is kind of like kind of venting for me. It's like I do this stuff all the time and get it out of my brain. But I still think a lot of people can resonate with it as well. As my biggest downfall as I've grown up is I learned it in school at a young age. It was like, what's the point of trying if like you don't get a perfect score? Right. Or what's the point of going all out if I'm still going to have to run anyways? Yeah. Right. Like all these things, like, the bare minimum is good enough. What's the point of working harder than I have to, right? And that has reflected in so many other aspects of my life, in my relationships, in my career, sometimes in my business, and it frustrates me, right? And I think this comes back to a lot of like when we're not getting what we want, and we like to blame the external, the situations and circumstances. Yeah. It really is, and this is why I love like kind of shifting my content the way it is I needed to hear that I was the problem for a very long time, right? Because I didn't accept it. I was stubborn. It was someone else's.
You're the bottleneck.
What was that?
You're the bottleneck.
Yeah, you're the bottleneck, right? As I learned more about business, like the only reason I'm not seeing the growth I want to be, it's because of me, right? And it's the same for anyone in health and fitness. I've accomplished every health and fitness goal I've ever wanted to accomplish, right? Unknowingly. It just
hang on, pause. For those who don't know Jonah's like 6'5" Greek god, okay, like all right, shredded to the gill, like I fit into Jonah's armpit. If Jonah gives me a side hug, I go into his armpit. But now he has Fabio hair to make it even better. So now he's like 6'3", 6-pack, dark, beautiful skin, and he's got a man bun. Like, look out, ladies. Sorry, he is married. You're welcome, Hannah.
Well, okay, thank you, and I don't mean to say that as a flex, but
flex, bud. You fucking do it.
It's so easy for me to do physical things, right?
Yeah.
I'm always so ready to challenge my body physically because I like sucking at things physically. But when it comes to like the internal, like the mental, like leveling up, that like so many like the frustration or getting the same stuff over and over again, like in my brain, the way my body works, it's like, well, I have to just obviously work harder, right? And then that just continues to amplify on a massive scale. Where that going back to like doing just the bare minimum for everything, it was like, well, I suck at this, so what's the point of actually pushing past it, right? So the analogy that you just used, like, well, the bare minimum, the gun's clean, right? It's clean enough. That's totally fine. I don't need to worry about it later until I'm in the heat of battle, and then my gun goes click, right? Because of what I've made, and that's me, just like the decision I made when I was 8 years old, has followed me into my adulthood. I'm constantly hearing clicks over and over and over again, and it comes all the way down to like my inner bottleneck. It's like the physical stuff is easy for me, but it's the challenging is being like, okay, am I actually showing up with the intention that I need to be? And am I showing up as a person that I know I want to be? Right? We met some of the most influential people in the world a couple weeks ago.
Right.
Like, am I showing up the way they are? And the answer is fuck no, I'm not. and then it's like, and then my wife was asking like, well, how do you need to start showing up? And then like in my head is like, as we start to kind of uncover these layers and actually start to identify like our the real reasons why we don't rise above our own limitations, or we don't identify the actual intentions that we have, is because like we don't like change. We inherently hate change. Yeah. And we also hate facing that we're actually the problem.
Sure.
Right. And so naming it out loud is like, how do I need to show up as, is kind of scary. Because then when you say that and you identify it, and you already say like, that's not me right now. So like, great. You have two choices. You can say it's not me right now. I get to get there one day, or it's that's just not me. And it's never going to be me. Sure. Right. I think you had a post about this. You either keep going or you give up.
Yeah.
And that is
that post tanked, by the way.
Huh?
That post sucked, by the way. It tanked.
Oh, I liked it.
Got like 1,000 views. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Shut the hell up. We'll talk about that later. But all that being said, it really comes down to like, you have to face it. It's so, however fucking cliche it sounds, is face it in the mirror, right? And identify the emotions or name the monster, so that you can become the hero that actually steps into those higher intentions, and you stop getting the same frustrating feelings over and over and over again. And this is where I light up, right? Like talking and interacting and like helping people, right? Because I'm sharing my story. When it comes to like sit down, Jonah, write copy, I'm like, fuck you. I don't want to write copy right now. Like, I don't see the immediate translation, right? Again, I'm going back to the cleaning your gun, but I know it's going to be super beneficial for me later. But like, does that make sense? I kind of lost
no, absolutely. I think a lot of this, I think you said it without saying it. I think so much of how we show up is tied directly to our identity, who we think we are. Because the thing people forget is, our lives are unconscious, right? Like every part of our day-to-day is so unconscious. Well, which means our identity always comes out. So when we go into autopilot mode, which we can't help, our lives are 90% in autopilot mode, then our actions are going to be conducive with who we think we are with our identity. So for example, one of the things that has been just living in my brain lately, especially when I set big goals. So I have some really nasty things I'm working on right now that no one knows. I don't even think you and I. Right. But I've shifted. But every time I think about what I'm working on, these really big goals, it's not what do I have to do to get that? It's not how do I get that? My first thought is, who do I have to become who gets that? Because there's a subtle difference. It's not how do I make $1 million? It's no, who do I have to become who makes $1 million? Right. Yeah. Or like in the world of our clients, how do I lose 40 pounds? Who do I have to become who loses 40 pounds? Because then Ed Milet said it on one of his clips on his Instagram the other day. I'm going to forget it. I saved it. He basically said, how did he word it? He said, you can either live by emotions or live by who you actually are. And in terms of like executing our actions, like let's say like 30-year-old Mrs. Jones, who's just trying to lose 40 pounds, doesn't feel like counting her calories that day, or doesn't feel like going to her workout that day. Well, then the question is like, how do I lose 40 pounds? No, who do I have to become that loses 40 pounds? Well, people who lose 40 pounds do what they say they would do when they don't want to do it. People who who love the way their physique looks, works out consistently, shows up for themselves consistently. So instead of thinking through the lens of what do I have to do to get, it's who do I have to become who ironically gets. You see what I mean? There's a subtle difference. And that's where I think most people like lack this area, is because we always execute in congruence with our identity. So if your unconscious actions are shitty, or you have this internal disconnect on how you show up for yourself, then it may be more of an identity problem, like who you actually are. You see what I'm saying? Exactly.
No, and you're right. You exactly summarized my fucking squirrel brain.
No, you're good. You're good. I live in squirrel brain, dude. I live in squirrel brain.
Good. So this is why you understand my language. But
right.
It's that subtle shift. This is when I was trying to figure out like my messaging. It's like I used to say like fat loss is easy, right? And I started to realize that it's only because I struggled so much with it for myself for a long time, because there was such a lack of clarity. And a lot of people struggled with this, right? Because there's so much information. There's so many opinions out there that's like, this is how you do XYZ. Like, this is how you get.
Right.
It doesn't talk about this is who you be. This is how you become that person who gets the thing, right? And that's where like I made the connection for myself on my own physical, is like, it's not about the numbers. It's not about like the will. It's about who I am, and I have a non-negotiable myself. I go to the gym every single day. That's part of my brand. That's what I do. And that's like, I don't work out every day, right? I only work out 3 times a week, but like
what do you do at the gym the other 4?
The other 4 is like mobility and other things that like I never paid attention to, right? I don't have nearly as much pain, but I'm like taking care of myself in a different way, because that's like me. And that's how I know I would act if I had accomplished my goal, right? And I have the luxury of being able to do that. Not everyone can do that. But that's just part of, that's what I said, this is who I want to be. So this is what I'm going to do. Right. And because I've done that, I feel better than I ever have physically. Right. Another part of that I've been like trying to adjust is like, I've struggled with my mental health for the vast majority of my life. I've gone through suicidal depression 2 or 3 times, and it's been some of the hardest stuff I had to come from. Right. But, and as I started, like, as you start to identify your pattern, you become aware of your patterns. Yeah. And like you said, we live our lives on autopilot, unconsciously or subconsciously. Right. But like, once you start identifying, becoming aware of your patterns, you're like, oh, you can like point out the trends that say, this is why this went wrong. So when I was going through my suicidal depression for the 3rd time, I was sitting there like, okay, what's the common characteristics here? And it usually came down to the fact that I didn't do anything for my mental health. I just basically suppressed, and just continued to move on and pretend like it would just go away. Right. But then I said, okay, so I'm being reactive, because then I was only going to therapy when things were really bad. I wasn't going when things were okay. Right. So a rule I made for myself is I have a weekly therapy session, and I do something for my mental health every single day to be more proactive. That's something I had to become. Right. And when we're talking about clients who struggle with motivation, who get in their own head, become their own bottleneck for their weight loss, it's like, why did you even start this? Right? Because you want to be around for your kids for a long period of time. Is that parent, that ideal parent that you want to be, are they going to show up to the gym even though they don't want to? Yes, right. Do it. Right? Are they going to add the salad to their meal? Right? Not restrict. Just like, hey, there's no fucking greens on here. Are they going to add that? Yes, they will. Right? It's super simple stuff like that. You don't have to be like to the extreme. I don't want anyone to go to the extremes that I've ever had to do.
Yeah.
And that's where it was like why I did align with the message of like fat loss is easy. Well, it's easier than you think it is, right? Because you start identifying with what you need instead of like who you need to be, instead of what you need to do to get, like you said earlier.
No, absolutely. Well, and it's interesting. Like one of the things that you just said was, and this applies with anything, but especially for weight loss, when you said like, basically when your mental health went south, is you quit doing the things that got you to a good spot. I actually had this conversation with my therapist. because with my mental health, the biggest thing I struggle with is anxiety. Right. That's usually what where if I'm going to have a chink in my armor, is anxiety. Right. So I used to wake up all the time with like not panic attacks, but like really bad anxiety. Still don't know to this day. I think finding out I had sleep apnea helped, because like if I'm suffocating, like of course you're going to wake up stressed out. Well, anyway, but I would notice these bouts of like, I would go on roller coasters of anxiety. Like it'd be great for a long time, and then it'd get really bad, and then get really go whatever. And I talked to my therapist about it, and she's like, well, are you still doing your morning routine you told me about that like grounds you and like get your emotions out? And I go, actually, I quit doing that. I got lazy. And she's like, well, maybe we need to get back to doing that. And I noticed that pattern is when I would do good, my anxiety would go down. I would quit doing the things that kept it good. And then it immediately went to my toothbrush analogy of we brush our teeth when they're clean. Why? It's because in the absence of consistent teeth brushing, plaque builds up, gingivitis sets in, bad breath is prevalent, right? Like, so we brush our teeth every day, twice a day when they're clean, because we know in the absence, bad shit happens. And then as that goes to weight loss, how many times as a coach have you heard someone say, well, I did keto or insert trendy diet here because it wasn't sustainable? They go, but then when I stopped doing it, I gained all my weight back. Well, it's like, no shit, Sherlock, right? Because you quit doing what got you there. And that's the biggest misconception, I think, in weight loss is people forget they're going to have to do this forever. That's why I always tie it back to teeth brushing. You're going to brush your teeth till you die, because you know in the absence, it's bad stuff's going to happen. So, wow, that was really loud. So sorry about that. It's the same thing with like weight loss and all this stuff, where it's why it has to be sustainable, because in the absence of execution, you're going to go back to the way things were, you know?
Yeah. And I dude, it bugs me to no end that it's like, when do I get to eat normal again? Like, that's a common phrase. It's like, your normal got you there. Like that's what put you in a place. Right. And I think people like, and we're not going to talk about like eating disorders. It's a completely different thing.
Sure.
I recently got yelled at about that on social media. And I'm just like,
I have a love-hate relationship with social media, and I love it, but like I fucking hate people sometimes.
Anyway, we'll talk about that later. But like, no one, I learned this from Mike Milner, who's another coach in our space. And it really, like, when I heard this, it just completely, like, it just hit all the light bulbs. It's like, are you willing to do the thing that you're doing to lose weight forever? Are you willing to not eat carbohydrates for the rest of your life? Are you willing to track your calories for the rest of your life? Right? Like, if you can answer those questions very clearly and understand that your normal is going to be something that is going to help you sustain these goals, like, normal isn't going back to eating whatever you want. Right. And the funny thing is, when you do achieve your goals and you do achieve that like true freedom with your food, you do eat whatever you want, but you have that higher intention that kind of goes back to intention. Like, you know which foods that are going to serve you and know how to dabble and go into the place that are going to actually amplify your life, or instead of putting yourself in this tiny 1,200 calorie box, or you can't touch the carbohydrates, or you can't, or you're paleo, or you're fucking vegan, or all these things that you're doing just to get the thing, instead of actually worrying about like, how can I sustain the thing. Right.
Well, people don't realize, and people like jaw drop when they hear someone like I say this, is like diet food and regular food. It's the quantity. It's not the food itself. Like I'll tell someone, like, they'll ask me like what to get at like McDonald's, and everyone thinks it's going to be the answer is like a salad and a water and a blank chicken breast. I go, no, what do you normally get at McDonald's? A large number one. And I go, okay, just get a small number one.
Boom.
And they're like, wait, hang on. And I go, yeah, I have this theory, this idea that I teach called the power of better. Not the best. Don't ever go with the best option. Ever go with the barely better option. Like, and I use that as an analogy. I go, if you're in the drive-thru, what's the best option? A salad with a chicken breast and a water. Fuck my life. That's the worst sounding thing ever. But like, and you're going to just be pissed off. You're going to spend like $17 on that, and you're going to be angry. And then, but like, what'll be the better option? Okay. Instead of a large number one with a Coke, how about a medium or a small number one with a Diet Coke? Because now you're satiated, you got what you were craving. It's just in a little bit smaller package, right? Yeah. Like, I don't know where she found these. Shelby, I was on my story today. Shelby has now in our pantry a box of mini Rice Krispie treats. And I have one of those like every other hour because they're so good. It's like nostalgia in a square. I don't smash the whole box of them, but when I want a fucking Rice Krispie treat, I go into the cupboard and get a 45 calorie square Rice Krispie treat. I'll have fucking 4 of those little bastards today. But it's like maybe 200 calories, like, right. So but it goes back to like, I'm not avoiding anything, but that ties even deeper to how you and I both teach this, where, like what Mike talks about, where you have to, will you do this forever? I like to draw an analogy between you build your transformation, like you build a house. Mm-hmm. Like none of us would live in a house if the contractor said, all right, you should be good for just a few months before it starts crumbling. Right. Exactly. When a good builder builds a house, they actually make every decision 100 years in the future. If I frame it, will it be here in 100 years? Yes. Cool. If I put the door in this way, will it still be here in 100 years? Bet. If I put the roof on, will it be here in 100 years? Probably not. Okay, let's do it this way. Will that be here in 100 years? Bet. Let's roll. Well, that's how we have to operate this stuff. Can you give up carbs for the next lifetime? No. Well, fuck off. Can I give up date night because, cheeseburgers and fries and milkshakes are bad? No. Okay, no, let's not do that. Not. Well, can I have whatever I want just in moderation? Yeah. Okay, roll. Let's fucking roll with that. It's the same kind of thing.
Dude, yeah. And there's so many ways that we can frame that for the individual, right? Because even though like you get to build your own house. And I think everyone gets so caught up in this love-hate relationship with social media, and why I'm answering so many similar questions of like, is this good? Is this bad? Should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? It fucking depends, right? Ultimately, because you're going to build your own damn house. You're going to build your own vehicle of sustainability, right? And once you accept that, like, it's going to depend on the individual. Like, I've trained clients who never like really changed how they eat, how they ate. Like, they didn't drastically like cut out fast food or candy or anything. They're like, hey, you know what? Let's see how much calories you're just eating in general. And we found that they were eating about 3,000 calories. And they were like, great, like you have 100 pounds to lose. Let's slightly drop it down, right? Like better, not best. And then we got them eating at a 21 to 2,500 calorie deficit or new maintenance level, right? He lost 30 pounds in 6 months just from doing that. We didn't start prioritizing protein. We didn't add a bunch of vegetables. We just said, what are you currently doing that's slowing you down, right? And that's what made them happy. That's how he was building his house, and then I have clients who have physique goals. Like, great, let's do a deep dive into what you're currently doing and understand like macros and protein and all that fun stuff, because that's your house, that's your foundation. Everything has a tool. Everything. I really love. I might steal that from you. Which one? But better is better than best.
Yeah. No, it's the power of better, not the power
of better, right? Well, because like it depends. It always depends on the person and their foundation that they are.
Absolutely.
Creating.
Well, and so here's the thing that the disconnect I see a lot of people have. So I teach this one. I add a caveat on the whole house thing. Because I word it this way. You have to live in the house you build, because for some reason people think they can build one house and then move into another. The amount of people who I see say this, they go, well, I'm going to lose all my weight really quickly by cutting carbs, by quit going out to eat, by doing keto, whatever stupid bullshit they're doing. And then once I get to where I want to be, I'm going to just flip my switch to sustainability. I go, that will never work. Number one, psychology shows us that doesn't work with human behavior. But number two, that is the equivalent of like going through school and cheating your entire way through high school and then saying you're going to get your shit together when you're in college. Like, sorry, this game is cumulative. It doesn't work like that. But that's the thing that people have this big disconnect is you're going to have to live in the house that you build. So if you build we'll say you're building your transformation, you're building a house. If you build your transformation on lack of sustainability, under chaos, under stress, under extremism, under chaos, I think I may have said that already. Well, sorry, sweetheart, but now you have to live there. So then the question before we even get started is, what kind of house do you want to build? Well, I want my house on peace. I want it on minimalism. I want it on effortlessness. I want it on not that big of a deal. Well, cool. We got to build it that way. You cannot build one house and then live in another.
Dude, I love that so much. And I think it's very underrated to be able to identify like what your driving forces are. And that you unconsciously build your house off of, right? Because we make impulse decisions based off who we currently are, not really understanding that like the house we're building, like we have to stay here, right? No matter what it is. I think it was a recent podcast with Ed Milet, and just common theme throughout this entire episode, like identifying those types of behaviors or those type of situations that we tend to attract in general. Like if you live in chaos because that's your job, that's your family, like, and that you're someone who thrives in chaos, like, well, I mean, that serves you, right? But could you sustainably thrive in that chaos forever? Most people can't. Most people don't see the results that they would like to, because something always has to be on fire. And if you ever get them to truly calm down, they'll unknowingly, subconsciously try and get back into that chaotic home. And that's because they never really changed anything. They never identified that chaos was something that they attracted for themselves. And that's something that I mean, I grew up in a low income household, right? Everything, every day was stressful for some reason, you know.
Scared of money. Every time you got money, you had to get rid of it.
Exactly. Yeah. Anytime with money, it was bills, no luxury, nothing like that. An abusive stepfather that you had to basically guess or like roll the dice of who was going to walk through the door. And, you know, it's like, oh, I don't know if I can be loud and bubbly, or do I have to be quiet and silent and hide in my corner, you know? And at the time, it kept me alive. It was my survival mode. A lot of us make these decisions when we're super young, when we're just like trying to figure out the rules of at which life operates, right? We're just trying to identify what we learn so much because we have to. Right. And then we don't change those things. And people live with these rules that they make for themselves into their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, their entire lives, without actually identifying those emotional homes that serve them once to keep them safe, alive in those times of like chaos. Right. But then they unknowingly don't know how to get out of chaos because they never identify it. And two, they continue to fulfill the prophecy. It's like, well, if something's okay, if everything's okay, something's wrong, right? It's like something is going to be around the corner to actually shut all this up. And that's, again, it's almost like therapeutic for me. And this is why this is the same kind of people I work with, is like people like me who've done this to themselves for so long. And I was just talking to one of my clients yesterday who we've been working together for about a year, right? She's lost 20 pounds and she's like almost back to her college athlete weight. And she struggled a lot with her mental health, and she has a lot of control issues, right? Because she was younger, and that was the only way, like as she got older, was like to feel safety, she needed control. So we were kind of reviewing the year, because she was still kind of in this place where she was feeling like she's not seeing the progress that she wants to see, like when it comes to her body. Like she's like, I don't have the muscle mass that I want. I'm not shedding fat like I want. I can't look at my body. I don't feel good enough. Right. But then we look back at the whole year, it's like, one, you've been going to therapy consistently and working through your trauma on a regular basis, like you've never done before. You've actually started exercising in a way that actually you enjoy, that challenges you, but you're not doing it out of pain. You've been able to control every aspect, or at least tame your nutrition. So it's never like this all or nothing mindset anymore. It's someplace that you actually can sustain. And, you know, like reviewing, like, you don't have to do anything different right now. You're doing everything I need you to be doing. But then in her head, she's like, but everything's not on fire. I need something to be wrong. It's like, I'm doing something wrong with my nutrition. Like, I need help. I need to hop on a call with you. I'm like, okay, let's talk about it. And she just listened, like, well, like, I'm overcomplicating it. I'm like, how are you overcomplicating it? And it was like, oh, blah, X, Y, Z. Like, but you fix that. Like, I'm looking at your logs right now. It's not a problem. Oh, like, it's not. Well, I have this other problem. Like, no, you don't. Like, we already fixed that. Like, reviewing your
that is unconscious addiction, or pattern addiction 101.
Exactly.
Emotional and pattern addiction 101.
Yeah. So when we identify that and we say, hey, like, you're doing everything you wanted to be doing without realizing it, but your emotional home is trying to get back in that pattern of like, something's got to be on fire. And she's like, holy crap, I don't know how to function like this. It's like, we stay here.
Well, and so here's the thing. There's two things. I don't know if you've studied Dr. Joe Dispenza at all. Actually, his book is...
Yes, I'm reading it right now. It's fucking amazing.
There. It's that one right here on my shelf. It's Becoming Supernatural, one of the best books ever. Well, he mentions two things in his content, maybe even that book. I can't remember if he has a bunch of books, but anyway, one thing he mentions is two things around those emotions, around pattern addiction or emotional addiction. Number one is you can't escape a jail you don't know you're trapped in. So if you, like your client, she like is doing all this shit and always ends up back where she would start at, or in a worst case, or in a worse spot. Well, if we can't identify and those patterns, we don't have the awareness, we can't fix it, right? If you don't hear the pinging in your engine, you can't know it's time to go to the mechanic. But then number two, this is one of the biggest things I took from Dispenza, was that we cannot live in survival and achieve things at the same time. Because basically what happens is the way the survival brain works is when, and this is the problem, is when we're addicted to these negative emotions and addicted to chaos and anxiety and things like that, where when you're like, even think about it, if you're like mentally, like say the animalistic side of our brain, if we're running from the equivalent of the T-Rex, he's like, this is the analogy he gives. If we're running from the T-Rex, or if you know there's a tiger chasing you and you're like, fuck, and you're running for your life, are you open to that raise at work? Are you open to like, I might receive an opportunity? Are you open to any of this stuff, these awesome things that you want? Of course not, because your brain is programmed for survival at that point. So when we're in these addictive patterns of like stress, anxiety, lack, scarcity, all these things, our brains will not let us be open to receiving things. And because the unknown is scary, right? But the unknown's also where all the cool shit's at, right? Why do you think this is, I teach clients this, why do you think sabotage happens? It's when you're farthest out in front. Sabotage doesn't happen when you're struggling. Sabotage happens when you're the farthest you've ever been. Right. It's one of the biggest reasons, I think, bar none, is why everyone should hire a coach, is because when you, let's say every time you fall off within 3 months, well, in month 4, you are a ticking time bomb for sabotage, because your brain is like, this is so uncharted. I'm so scared. I could get hurt. Something bad could happen. You know what? Being fat's not so bad after all. And that, it goes back to, that's just how our minds work. That's why, but because our minds crave the familiar, so we need to have a long enough time in the unknown where that's now the new familiar, or the result, the transformation. And it's just so hard to do that on our own, which is why you should hire someone like Jonah or myself. So
yes, please. This is why we do it, because we're actually doing it for ourselves.
Yeah,
and it's so cool when you and that's kind of how I needed to understand health and fitness in general, is to break it down in those primitive aspects. We are the only creatures that can put ourselves in a fight or flight response with a thought, right? Like a bunny.
Bob Proctor words that we're the one of the only things that separates us from dogs is we have an intellect.
Yeah, and that's crazy. We are basic. We are we are animals that with we're just animals with complicated emotions, right? And if you can really see that, and we'll learn how to separate the two of like survival brain or like higher self brain, right? And getting out of survival and moving into thriving, right? Surviving is quick reactions. It's all material. It's all right here, right? You live in this known because like it's easy. You know what to expect, right? And we get addicted to those responses when going into the unknown. It's like we don't like change. We don't know what to expect. We want to know what's around the corner so that we can anticipate it, right? But then we don't really understand how that is affecting us on such a deeper level, other than like just how many calories you're eating.
Well,
right?
but then if every thought you're thinking is, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? You're not going to be open. You're not going to see the 3 inches you lost. You're not going to see the win, like your client that didn't see any of her wins. It's the same thing.
Exactly. You're always you're looking for the lack and not like opening the possibility of like, oh shit, I actually did accomplish a lot. Right. And this kind of goes back to like our brains. I'm wholeheartedly convinced we're superheroes or gods that like have been brainwashed to forget how powerful we are because of our brain and how much we can create for ourselves. Like we unknowingly create a lot of this turmoil, a lot of these struggles because of that addiction in that survival brain. Right. And if we can step out of it and really put ourselves into that, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is like how that person or that version of us who has the success we want, how they would act in a certain situation that puts us in that unknown space. But it's not exactly unknown because I was actually listening to Dispenza this morning, where visualization and meditating and like conditioning your mind to actually feel the gratitude before you have the great relationship, or feel the gratitude before you have the abundance or feel the abundance before you have the wealth. Right. Yeah. Once you start conditioning your mind to do those things, you actually open it. Then you get out of that survival running from the tiger brain. And then that's how you open and let those opportunities, those possibilities start stepping in. You start looking for the reasons to feel successful and stop looking for all the reasons to feel like a failure. And that's super crazy.
Well, which, to tie everything together, requires an insane amount of intention.
Yes, it does. This is why we have no notes, because we just fucking bring it full circle, right?
That's right. Well, what's funny along those lines though with so this is I find a lot of peace when I'm struggling with any of this kind of stuff. I get a lot of peace and grounding from when I tie it back to universal laws no one can argue with, right? Even my skeptical brain, right? Like no one can argue with gravity. Like, hey, I don't believe in gravity, but this is still gonna get thrown down, right? Like I don't believe in gravity, but that thing still hit the shelf behind me. Well, so for me, like, even if I'm going through a rough season with whatever, and I'm like, fuck, I just can't get out of this. But you have to understand, just like you said, we're all powerful beings. The thing is, though, everyone would agree when it rains, it pours. Everyone would agree their one thought in their life is over, or one bad situation and it's a month of like terror, right? Well, the thing is, though, just like the law of gravity, there's the law of polarity, which means it goes the other way. So yeah, when it rains, it pours, but when it's also shines, it shines a lot, right? Or when you could have one negative thought or what you could get so much negative momentum, you wake up, you're late for work, you spill coffee on yourself, you stub your toe and your kid moves out. Like, fuck. Well, that means somewhere else, you can find the lottery ticket on the ground. You can get a raise at work and you got to come home early and your kids behave, right? Whatever. So in the same way, like I always lean back into these, like the laws of the universe, no one can argue with when I'm going through a rough time like this, where if it can happen this way, per physics, it happens that way. If there's an inside of this room, there's an outside. If the light switch goes on, light switch goes off. If there's up, there's down. If there's whatever. So if your life can get really fucking bad because your focus gets off or your intention goes south, or because you've on a string of bad luck, whatever you want to call it, well, that shit can also happen that way, but you have way more control around this than we think. So
yeah, no, I could listen to you talk all day. The way you described that doctor earlier, that's how I look at you. Just listening to you describe these things.
Well, that's awfully kind of you, Jonah.
Well, seriously, like it makes sense of why you do so well with this kind of stuff. It's because your analogies. And you take and you don't regurgitate information. You flip it in a way that is easy to digest and understand. And this, even just getting the honor to be able to chat with you on this, it's cool because I'm learning as you're speaking, right? And this is something. Oh, God, it's learning something for me for some reason. I don't know what, but this is all cyclical in all aspects, like beyond weight loss, beyond business. In any aspect. These. We are our intentions behind what we lack or what we achieve all come back to our emotional home, our foundations that we've built, and the intentions that we need to create that may allow us to step into the person that we need to be, to have the body, to have the finances, to have whatever it is you desire. They're all connected. Right? If it rains, it pours, but it can be a fucking sun. It could be a sunshine and rainbow just on the other side. If you just are willing to take it for what it is,
sure.
Take it for what it is and not for what it isn't. Right? Mm-hmm. Is that like I did like face value, but like ultimately realize it's going to pass if you can just set the intention to go the other way. Right? Mm-hmm. Nothing is truly miserable. Your life isn't truly ending. I mean, we're all going to die eventually, right? But like a situation isn't as scary as our brains, as our limited brains can put ourselves into. And we can take that and shift any situation to find a positive once we start training and stepping into those roles that we would like to, and it's so many good ways to understand that, to hear that, but really ultimately it comes down to applying it to the little things. And again, going back to intentions, like you have to apply it to the little thing. If you're always showing up into the gym and doing the bare minimum rep range, and that's what you're going to show up as in everything. That's going to show how you're going to show up as a parent, as an employee, as a spouse, right? But if you can start practicing like showing up and doing one more, right, or doing an extra set or something along those lines, that little stuff, that intention starts to manifest itself in other aspects. But it has to practice. And going back to the Dispenza of like our brains. Once one thought, like it's multiple neurons firing in a pattern that we strengthened over time, and to interrupt that pattern, we have to set the intention to catch ourselves in the loop and start to fire new neurons that connect. But it sucks, because like just to finish my thought, like you said earlier, we do so many things on autopilot. It feels uncomfortable because our brain wants things to be on autopilot because it's already making millions of decisions for us. So it's going to take practice, but it is possible. And you just have to kind of hunker down and realize that the small decisions are what leads to the massive transformations. And it sucks to be intentional at first, but it's who we become along the process. It's not what we get, it's who we become.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. People, this is the thing, and we'll kind of wrap up on this.
Oh, God, sorry, an hour? Jesus.
You're good. No, I love it. People forget how much of a full-time job thinking is. There's actually a quote, I'm going to butcher it, by Bob Proctor, one of the first people that I really started studying with this stuff years ago. So Bob was talking about the concept of thinking, and he basically said that, like, I'm going to butcher these numbers. It was something crazy along the lines of like 70% of people, or I'm sorry, like 30% of people think they think, 10% of people actually think, and then like 90% of people would rather die than think. It was something crazy numbers like that. Well, it's true. Thinking is a full-time job. But then if we say, well, what's thinking? It's honestly like the way that I've always been described is thinking is our ability to ask and answer our own questions. And it's called a thought. It's called thinking, asking and answering our own questions. But then with the animalistic and negative side of our brain, like, well, like you'll lock your door, like you're leaving your house, and then you'll question whether you locked your door. And then somehow your brain extrapolates it to like your dog catching on fire and then like terrorizing the neighborhood, like, because that's just how our brains work. But then on the other side, we can think a thought and generate a brand new business that helps millions of people. Right. So like the concept of thinking and deciphering is it's such a full-time job, but then it also goes back to, we're the only creature who does this. We're the only creatures who think about what we can think about. And this is one of the things that I actually urge people to do when getting into this realm of deciphering, like, well, what thoughts are good? What thoughts are bad? Which ones can I believe? Just because we think it doesn't mean it's true. Just because we feel it doesn't mean it's true. Like if I feel like a failure, doesn't mean I'm actually a failure. If I feel like I'm worthless, it doesn't mean I'm actually worthless. Right. But one of the things Ed Mylett says, even to tie him into this more, is don't be so quick to believe everything you think, but also, think about what you think about. Like, instead of like, let's say I have a thought of like, I suck at life. There's that version of me, but then there's the version of me sitting back going, why did he just say that? Why did Jared just think he sucks? Then there's the version over here that's watching me think about what that version of me thinks. You know what I mean? So like, that's thing is there's multiple versions of you, essentially, like in a weird, twisted way. Yeah. But we have to get really good at thinking about what we think about. And this is something that we teach clients, where the client's like, oh, I'm never going to make it. And I go, who taught you that? Why is that even on your radar? What makes you think it's true? Because when you question a belief, it immediately takes its power away.
Yeah.
Right.
You find where it comes from.
Yeah. Well, not even just that, but have you ever been in an interaction with like a salesperson or someone who's like way more confident than you are, and you have this big belief and they go, are you sure about that? And you're like, maybe not. Like instantly it dismantles that, just because they say, well, why? Why do you believe like that? So we can do this in the same thing with ourselves when our thoughts are going AWOL, or when a client's his thoughts are going AWOL. We're like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to make it. Okay. Why do you think that? What makes you think it's true? Do you have evidence to support that? Oh, you don't. Interesting. And then like we keep going down that path to when all we're doing is thinking about what we think about.
Yeah.
So
it's super cool.
Yeah. But all right, Jonah, tell everyone where they can find you at.
Fuck. I am so crazy. I'm like trying to catch up, man. I'm like sitting here thinking like I'm watching you, watching it. It's my brain is in all different directions. But thank you again. You can find me on social media, depending on when this podcast comes out. Jonah Mitchell _fitness for almost everything. Jonah Mitchell on Facebook. And I have a podcast, but it's probably going to change its name pretty soon. So that will be on my social media. So I'll leave that for later.
There we go. I love it. Well, my friend, I really appreciate you doing this. And this was a good conversation. It's going to help a lot of people. So I appreciate you, man.
Thanks for letting me do it. I appreciate you.
Awesome. Talk soon. All right, guys, we are back. Thank you so much for sticking around for the whole episode. I know these guest episodes are a little bit longer, but I really appreciate you sticking around. And if you did, I know you got a lot out of the episode. I know you probably hopefully took some notes. And as always, my goal with these podcasts, guys, is I don't want you to just get fired up. I don't want you to get motivated. I don't want you to just be entertained. I want you to be able to go, that was my nugget. That was the one thing I'm going to take and run with. Because again, it's so easy to like go to seminars, go to events, listen to episodes like this, or watch episodes like this if you're on YouTube, and just like absorb and listen, but not actually implement and execute. So, because like they say, knowledge without mileage is bullshit. So you need to put the plan to pavement. You need to take those one or two nuggets that you got and think, okay, how can I apply this to my day to day? Because that's what it's about. That's how you change your life, not just by listening to this. Don't be like what a lot of people will call like a success zombie, or a person that just absorbs all this info. Because we all know those people who just listen to all the info, listen to all the podcasts, follow all the gurus, but then their life still sucks. And a year later, they're in the exact same position. And I don't want that for you. I want you to pick the one or two things and go, that was what I needed, and run with it. And then a year later, hit me or Jonah up and be like, yo, that one thing changed my life forever. And that's what this is about. So like I said, I hope you got a lot of value out of today's episode. Be sure, if you haven't already, subscribe either here on the audio, whether you're listening to this on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, wherever you're listening to it. Or if you're into watching your interviews, we do have all the episodes uploaded to YouTube. So I'll leave the links for all that in the description. And I appreciate you. Be sure and go check out the links below, all of them. I got a lot of cool stuff. Go connect with Jonah and Hannah. I know you guys will love their content if you love mine. So be sure and go support them and give them a follow, see what they're about and all of their stuff, hear their stories. But I also got some other cool stuff I have. Like if you're interested in applying for coaching and you're ready to take your stuff to the next level, I have links down there. If you're newer to my content and you really don't know where to start, I would definitely go check out my free course that I have down there. I have an email course that'll change your life. Or if you don't feel very supported and you'd like to get around more like-minded people, we have a fantastic community. It's called it's a group in Facebook. It's called Fat Loss Simplified. And we have some amazing people in there, and we do all sorts of trainings and have all sorts of resources for you in there. And if ever I'm doing like a challenge or like a giveaway or anything like that, that's where most people find out about it first. So you'll want to join that. I'll leave all the links in the description. And again, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for sticking around, and I'll talk to you next time.